Daniel Blake sat in his small office at the edge of the observatory, staring at the glow of his computer screen. Outside, the night sky was wide and endless, filled with stars. He loved nights like this. The air was cool. The hum of the telescopes was steady, and the quiet gave him space to think. Daniel was not famous, not rich, not even someone who stood out in a crowd. He was simply a young scientist, more comfortable with books and starlight than with people. On that night, however, he was restless. He scrolled through social media, watching people laugh at silly trends. The world seemed to find joy in jokes that meant nothing. He smiled at some of them, but quickly grew bored. His own account was quiet, with only a few friends and colleagues ever bothering to comment. On impulse, he typed something that made him chuckle. Still waiting for my alien vampire girlfriend to land in my backyard. Where are you, my pale space queen? He pressed post without thinking much about it. It was late and no one was watching. He expected maybe 2 likes, perhaps a laughing comment from his friend Carl, who always teased him about being a dreamer. What he did not expect was for the post to explode. By the time Daniel woke up the next morning, his phone was buzzing nonstop. His post had spread like wildfire. People across the internet were sharing it, laughing, creating drawings of what an alien vampire girlfriend might look like. Some gave her long wings and glowing eyes. Others made her elegant with dark gowns and silver crowns. Memes popped up everywhere. A few joked that Daniel had summoned her. Daniel rubbed his eyes in disbelief. Why this? Why me? He muttered. He had written papers on asteroid tracking, given lectures on cosmic dust, but none of that had gone viral. Instead, the entire world seemed fascinated by his random midnight joke. For the next few days, he tried to ignore it. At the observatory, Carl laughed whenever Daniel entered the lab. Careful, Dan, Carl said with a grin. Your vampire girlfriend might be hiding in the telescope dome. Ha, ha, Daniel replied, rolling his eyes.
Very funny, but the joke refused to die.
News outlets mentioned it in short, amusing articles. Fans began tagging him in strange messages. His inbox filled with both kind and ridiculous words. We love your sense of humor. Careful, the aliens are coming for you. She's on her way, better get the spare bed ready. At first, Daniel laughed with everyone else. But then, something changed. One late evening, when the observatory was quiet and the night was unusually still, Daniel noticed a message on his private research terminal. It was not an email. It was not from any network he recognized. The text was simple, glowing in green against the black background. Why do humans joke about blood and the stars? Daniel blinked. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. Who is this? He typed back. The answer came at once. We observe. We do not understand why you call for us. Tell us, his heart began to pound. He was a scientist. He had seen strange codes and errors before. But this was not a glitch. Someone or something was directly asking him questions. Is this a prank? He wrote quickly. Prank? No. We ask. Your words reached us. You call for one like me. Daniel's mouth went dry. Reached us? He thought. His mind scrambled for explanations. Perhaps some hacker was having fun with his viral post. Perhaps someone had designed a program to scare him. But the more he read, the less it felt like a joke. The questions grew more detailed, more precise. Explain your myths of those who feed on blood. Explain why you fear them and also admire them. Your people laugh, but they also dream. Why? Daniel swallowed hard. He typed carefully, trying to stay calm. Vampires are stories, old legends. Humans made them up to explain fears about death, sickness, and the night. We don't mean them literally. The response was slow this time, as though the sender was thinking, not literal. But you summoned. Your words are old, binding words. Do you not mean them? Daniel felt a chill crawl up his spine. He stared at the screen, the glow lighting his pale face in the darkness. This is just the internet, he whispered to himself. It's just someone playing around. But a small, persistent voice in his mind whispered otherwise. What if it isn't? Over the next week, the messages did not stop. They came at odd hours, sometimes in short bursts, sometimes long. Whoever or whatever was behind them seemed deeply curious about humanity. They asked about Earth's biology, about blood, about energy inside living beings. Daniel answered carefully, trying to test the source. When he explained oxygen transport, the stranger replied with terms far beyond human science. describing energy flows and resonance frequencies in ways Daniel could barely understand. When he tried to ask where they were from, the answer was always vague. Far, watching, close when you call. Carl noticed Daniel was distracted. You look pale, Dan. Don't tell me you're really starting to believe your vampire girlfriend is coming. Daniel forced a laugh, but his hands trembled when he reached for his coffee mug. He couldn't tell Carl the truth. How could he? Even he wasn't sure what was real. One night, Daniel decided to test the messages. He typed, "If you are real, show me something. Prove you exist." The reply came after a pause. "Look outside." Daniel hesitated. He turned his head slowly toward the observatory window. The night sky stretched wide, dotted with stars. For a moment, he saw nothing unusual. Then his breath caught a star shifted. No, not a star. Something brighter, moving with deliberate speed. It glided silently across the heavens, faster than any plane or satellite. It hovered for a second, glowing like a silver eye, then shot away into the dark. Daniel's heart hammered. He stumbled back from the glass. His fingers flew over the keyboard.
What was that?
We answered. Do you believe now? He sat frozen, his mind spinning. Every rational part of him screamed satellite, drone, illusion. But deep inside he knew the truth. Something beyond Earth had answered his joke, and it was coming closer. The following days felt unreal. The messages grew more personal. Daniel Blake, we know you. Your call was clear. You asked for one of us. I come. Daniel barely slept. He checked the skies every night. Each time he half hoped, half feared to see that moving light again. The internet had already moved on to new jokes and new trends. For the world, the alien vampire girlfriend meme was fading, but for Daniel it was just beginning. He knew something no one else did. His words had been heard by someone or something not human. One evening, when the observatory was nearly empty, Daniel stood outside, staring at the horizon. The air was calm, the world quiet. Then he felt it, a pressure like the silence before a storm. The sky above shimmered faintly, as if something vast was hidden behind the stars. For the first time, Daniel whispered the words he had once typed as a joke. Where are you, my pale space queen? And in the distance, the sky answered with a streak of silver light. Daniel Blake stood at the edge of the observatory field, staring at the sky as if it might fall open at any second. His heart was still unsteady from the strange light he had seen the night before. He told himself it was imagination, an illusion caused by exhaustion. Yet deep inside, he knew it was not. The words of the mysterious messenger echoed in his mind. I come. For days, the messages had been steady, almost rhythmic, as if the sender was growing nearer. But this night felt different. The air carried a stillness unlike anything he had experienced before. Even the crickets outside the observatory seemed to hush as though nature itself was waiting. Carl had gone home early, leaving Daniel alone in the wide silence. The computer screens glowed softly in the control room, displaying charts and star maps. But Daniel could not concentrate. Every time he looked up, he expected the sky to move again. He whispered to himself, "This is ridiculous. I'm letting a prank get inside my head." Yet he stayed. He could not force himself to leave. It happened just past midnight. At first, he noticed a faint tremor in the ground. It was so small that he thought it was his imagination. Then, a low hum filled the air, deep and steady, as if the atmosphere itself was vibrating. Daniel rushed outside, his breath quickening. Above him, the stars shimmered, then parted as something massive pushed through the sky. A vessel unlike anything built by human hands descended slowly, glowing with a pale silver light. It was shaped like a long crescent with curves that seemed alive, shifting subtly as if the ship was breathing. The light it gave off was not harsh but soft, almost moon-like, bathing the observatory field in an eerie glow. Daniel froze. His chest tightened. This can't be real. The ship lowered silently until it hovered just above the ground. No sound of engines, no flame, only that faint hum. The air grew heavy with strange energy, making his skin prickle. Then a seam opened in the vessel's side. A platform extended, lowering like a tongue from some celestial creature. Shadows moved within, and then she appeared. She was tall, nearly a head taller than Daniel, with skin so pale it reflected the moonlight. Her hair was long, flowing like strands of night. and her eyes glowed a deep crimson that seemed to pierce straight into him. She wore a garment that shimmered like liquid silver, flowing with her every movement, both regal and alien. For a long moment, Daniel could not breathe. She was exactly what the world had joked about, an alien woman who looked like the vampires of old myths. But unlike the cartoons and silly drawings on the internet, she was real. Terribly, impossibly real. The woman stepped onto the grass, her movement smooth and deliberate. The hum of the ship softened as if it bowed to her presence. Her gaze locked onto Daniel. "Daniel Blake," she said. Her voice was calm but carried a weight that made the night itself seem to listen. Daniel stumbled back a step, his throat dry.
How do you know my name?
Her lips curved slightly, not quite a smile. "You called me. You called my kind. And I answered." His mind reeled. That was a joke. "I didn't mean—" She raised a hand, elegant but sharp in its poise, and he fell silent. "You may call it a joke, but words have power, Daniel Blake. Across the dark between stars, your call reached me. You summoned, and so I came." Daniel swallowed hard. He wanted to argue, to insist that it was just a silly post online, nothing more. But every instinct screamed that she believed what she said. And standing before her, he could no longer deny that something beyond his understanding was happening. The woman stepped closer. He noticed then the faint glow beneath her skin, a subtle light that pulsed like a heartbeat. Her crimson eyes studied him with an intensity that made him shift uneasily. "Who are you?" he asked quietly. She tilted her head as though surprised he did not already know. "I am Valira of the Caliph. My people have traveled long searching for resonance. When your words reached me, I felt the call. It was clear, binding." "Binding?" Daniel repeated. Her gaze did not waver. "Yes. Among my kind, when one is called, the bond cannot be ignored. You spoke, Daniel Blake. You summoned me. By our law, you are mine." Daniel's eyes widened. "Yours? Wait, hold on. That's not how it works here. I didn't summon you. It was just a meme. A silly internet joke." Valira regarded him calmly, almost amused. "You may not understand the weight of your own words. But I do. You asked, and I answered. That is enough." Daniel backed up a step, shaking his head. His mind screamed for him to run, yet his legs refused to obey. "Listen, I'm human. We don't have those rules. You can't just claim me." Her expression softened slightly. She did not look angry. Instead, there was something almost curious in her eyes, as if she were studying a new creature. "Humans," she said slowly, "are strange. You fear what you desire. You laugh at what you long for. Do you not understand why you called me?" Daniel's lips parted, but no words came. Because in truth, he didn't know. That night he had written his joke. He had been tired, lonely, restless. Perhaps a part of him had wanted someone, or something, to answer. Valira stepped closer until she stood only a breath away. Daniel could see the fine texture of her skin, the glow beneath it, the sharp gleam of her eyes. She was beautiful in a way that frightened him, like fire or a storm. "You are mine," she repeated softly. Before Daniel could respond, a bright light flashed across the sky. He looked up and saw military aircraft approaching fast, their engines roaring. The ship had not gone unnoticed. Valira turned her gaze toward the planes, her expression calm, almost bored. The silver vessel behind her shimmered, and suddenly a barrier of light spread across the field. Invisible yet unmistakably strong, the aircraft circled but did not dare fire. "They are afraid," Valira said. "They do not matter. I did not come for them. I came for you." Daniel's stomach twisted. The world had seen her ship. The news, the governments, everyone would know by morning. And yet standing here, Valira looked at him as though he was the only person alive. "This is insane," he whispered. "Perhaps," Valira said, her eyes never leaving his. "But truth often feels that way. Do not fear. You will understand in time." The next minutes passed in a blur. Valira spoke little, simply watching him as though giving him time to accept what was happening. The ship hovered silently. The night stretched wide around them, and Daniel felt as though he had stepped into a dream from which he could not wake. When at last he found his voice, it came out shaky. "What do you want from me?" Valira tilted her head again, her dark hair flowing with the movement. "Bond, connection. You called and I answered. Our law is clear. But more than law, I am curious. Your kind is not like others. There is fire in you, humor, defiance. You are not prey, yet you do not flee. That is rare. Daniel shook his head. I don't understand any of this. You will, she said simply, and with that she extended her hand toward him. Daniel stared at it, frozen. Her fingers were long, elegant, with a faint shimmer under the skin. He hesitated, every part of him torn between fear and fascination. The hum of the ship grew louder. The crimson of her eyes deepened, and the world seemed to hold its breath. For Daniel Blake, the joke that had begun as nothing was now standing in front of him, flesh and blood, reaching for his hand. That night would be remembered as the moment everything changed, not just for Daniel, but for the entire Earth. And yet, in that quiet field, it was only a man and an alien, staring at one another, bound by words he had never meant to be serious. Daniel's hand trembled as he looked at Valeera's outstretched fingers. The night around them was silent except for the low hum of her ship, glowing softly behind her like a silver moon. He had never been more aware of his own heartbeat. Her crimson eyes were steady, fixed on him with an intensity that made him feel as though she could see not just his body, but every thought inside his mind. She did not rush him. She simply waited, her hand open, patient, certain. At last, Daniel whispered, "Why me?" Valeera tilted her head slightly, her pale hair shifting with the motion. "Because you called. And because your essence resonates with mine. Do you not feel it?" Daniel shook his head quickly. "No, I didn't call you. It was a joke. A silly joke on the internet." Her lips curved faintly. "Humans may laugh at truth, but their laughter hides longing. Your words carried more than jest. They carried desire, loneliness, curiosity. These are strong forces. They reached me." Daniel's throat tightened. He wanted to argue again, to deny her claim, but something in her gaze silenced him. Deep inside, beneath his confusion and fear, there was a part of him that remembered that night when he had written the post. He had felt lonely. He had wished for something beyond the ordinary. Still, he tried. "Even if you believe that, even if you think I called you, you can't just claim me like I'm an object. Humans aren't possessions." Valeera lowered her hand slowly but kept her eyes on him. "Not an object. A bondmate. In my culture, when one calls and one answers, the bond is sealed. It is not possession. It is union." Daniel frowned. "Union, you mean marriage? Or something like that?" Her crimson eyes softened slightly, though their glow never dimmed. "It is more. A connection of life essence. A sharing of strength. A promise that cannot be broken." Daniel's stomach nodded. "But I didn't agree to that. You can't force me." Valeera regarded him in silence for a long moment. Then she said, "I will not force. But you must understand, the call cannot be undone. You set it in motion. I am bound to you and you are bound to me, whether you accept it now or later. Our laws are clear." He ran a hand through his hair, pacing a few steps. His mind felt like it was tearing itself in two. On one side was everything he knew about reality, science, logic, reason. On the other side was Valeera, an alien, powerful and real, standing before him because of a single careless joke. "This is crazy," he muttered. "Perhaps," Valeera replied calmly. "But truth often feels that way to those who first see it." Before Daniel could respond, a sudden burst of light cut across the sky. Military drones and helicopters hovered in the distance, their searchlights sweeping over the field. The hum of engines grew louder as they circled, cautious but aggressive. Valeera glanced upward, unbothered. With a flick of her hand, the ship behind her shimmered and a dome of transparent light expanded outward, covering the field like a protective shell. The spotlights hit the barrier and scattered harmlessly. "They seek to take you from me," Valeera said, her voice low but firm. "They cannot." Daniel's heart leapt. "Wait, you can't fight them. If you hurt anyone, the whole world will see you as a threat." Her gaze returned to him. "I did not come to harm, but I will not allow interference. You are mine, Daniel Blake. I will not let them separate us." Daniel felt his knees weaken. "Stop saying that. I don't belong to anyone." Valeera's expression softened again, and for the first time, Daniel sensed something almost gentle beneath her strength. "You misunderstand. To say you are mine is not to claim ownership. It is to claim responsibility. I am bound to protect you, to guide you, to share my strength. In return, you share your essence with me. That is our way." Her words made him shiver. He could not tell if he was frightened or strangely comforted. The soldiers outside the barrier shouted through loudspeakers, demanding that Daniel step away. Their voices were sharp, panicked, filled with fear of the unknown. Daniel glanced at them, then at Valira, caught between two worlds. "You see?" he said, his voice breaking. "They don't trust you. No one will. You look like a threat to them. And if you keep saying things like claim and bondmate, they'll never accept you." Valira was quiet for a moment, her crimson eyes studying him. "Do you accept me?" Daniel froze. The question cut deeper than he expected. Did he? He wanted to say no. He wanted to reject everything, to walk away and pretend this night had never happened. But deep inside, something kept him from speaking that word. There was a strange pull, a thread he could not see but could feel, binding him to her. I don't know," he whispered. Valira nodded slowly, as though she had expected that answer. "Then I will give you time. But know this, the bond is real, whether you choose to honor it or deny it. It will not fade." The barrier shimmered again, and the soldiers' voices grew louder. Daniel realized the situation was spiraling. He turned back to Valira. "You have to leave," he said urgently. "If you stay, they'll attack. They'll see you as an enemy." Her eyes glowed brighter. "And what of you? Will they not take you, question you, use you? You spoke the call, Daniel Blake. You are already marked." Daniel swallowed hard. He knew she was right. Already the world would see him as part of this. His life would never be the same. I just need time to think," he said finally. Valira's gaze lingered on him. At last she inclined her head. "Very well. I will withdraw. But do not forget, our bond is sealed. Whether you flee, deny, or hide, I will find you. For you are mine." With that, she stepped back onto the glowing platform. The silver vessel hummed louder, rising into the air with smooth grace. The barrier around the field dissolved, and the night rushed back in with the sound of engines and shouting soldiers. In moments, the ship vanished into the stars, leaving only silence. The soldiers swarmed the field, surrounding Daniel. Questions rained down on him. Who was she? What had she wanted? What had she said? But Daniel could barely speak. His mind replayed Valira's words over and over. "You are mine. The bond is sealed." That night, under the blinding lights of human machines, Daniel Blake realized his life was no longer his own. For days afterward, Daniel was questioned by officials. They kept him under watch, recording every word he said about the encounter. He explained what had happened as best he could, but how could he describe something even he barely understood? He left out the part about the bond. That was too personal, too strange. But in the quiet of his mind, he could still feel it, a faint tug, like a thread of light connecting him to Valira across the stars. He dreamed of crimson eyes watching him, of a voice whispering his name. The world was in chaos. News networks broadcast footage of the silver ship. Governments argued about what to do, and scientists scrambled to analyze the energy readings. Everyone wanted answers. Only Daniel knew the truth. She had not come for Earth. She had come for him. One evening, weeks later, as Daniel sat alone in his apartment, he heard the familiar hum again. The air grew heavy, the walls vibrated, and a voice echoed inside his mind as clear as if she stood beside him. "Do you believe now, Daniel Blake? You cannot escape. You are mine." And Daniel realized the joke that had begun as nothing had now become his reality, one he could never walk away from. Daniel woke slowly from another thin, restless sleep. His apartment felt smaller now, crowded with questions. News footage looped across the television. Clips of the silver ship, interviews with experts, and heated debates about what the arrival meant for Earth. Friends and strangers sent messages. Some were kind, many were fearful. A few made jokes, trying to laugh at the strange truth. Daniel read them all and then closed his eyes. He had expected his life to return to normal after that first visit. Instead, it had changed in ways he could not imagine. The officials who had questioned him kept a careful watch. He had offers, requests really, from governments and institutions. They wanted his help to communicate, to learn if humans had somehow summoned alien visitors. Scientists wanted samples, journalists wanted interviews, and politicians wanted a plan. Every request felt like a small pull on his life, tugging him in different directions. Yet there was another pull, one that came from across the stars. Valira's voice reached him sometimes like a song in the night, soft and patient. She did not speak often, but when she did, her words were simple and steady. She told him about her people, the Caliph and their long journey through dark space. She spoke of travel between worlds, of learning and loss, and of rules older than memory. Daniel listened and learned. Valira explained that the Caliph had once used their abilities without thought. Long ago, they had taken from weaker species until others rose against them. Over centuries, they changed. They studied balance and learned to share instead of taking. Their bonds were part of that change. A bond was not a tool, it was a promise to protect and to honor. That idea both comforted and frightened Daniel. It sounded noble, but it also felt foreign and absolute. "Why did you choose me?" Daniel asked one night, alone at his small kitchen table. The question had lived inside him for weeks. Valira's answer came gentle and clear. "You laughed, but you also reached. Your words were honest beneath the mask of humor. We look for resonance, energy that matches ours. Your kind surprised us. You are small in strength, perhaps, but you have something larger spirit. You do not hide when the night comes. That matters." Daniel felt his cheeks warm. He had always thought his courage was ordinary.
She made it feel like more.
Still, the world around him did not see him as brave. It saw him as a person tied to an alien event. That made him the center of controversy. Every day officials visited him. Scientists attached soft sensors to measure his physiology, as if he were an experiment. They asked about Valira's ship, how it moved and what energy it used. Daniel answered what he could. He refused to hand over private thoughts of the bond, because that felt like betraying something too delicate to share. He lied sometimes, softening details so the world would not recoil, but hiding truth weighed on him. At the observatory, Daniel returned to work when they let him. The telescopes were steady friends. Their lenses kept him honest in a way public life never could. Between datasets and calibration routines, he taught himself more about the Caliph terms Valira used. He learned resonance and flow, and how the Caliph measured life energy in a pattern of gentle pulses. When he told his colleagues, they frowned. Some thought of myths, others thought of danger. A few quietly asked for more. One afternoon, a diplomat came with a request. "Dr. Blake," she said formally, "we would like you to meet with representatives from allied nations. We need your perspective on how to proceed." Daniel agreed, though it made him nervous. In the meeting room, he talked about curiosity and caution, about the danger of making assumptions. He argued that the world should not rush into aggression. "We don't know what they want," he said. "Valira came for me, not to harm us. We should treat this as an opportunity, if we can be wise." Some leaders nodded, but others looked away. Fear had many faces. Still, his voice reached one listener who mattered, a quiet scientist named Dr. Meera Patel. She believed in study before judgment, and she began to work with Daniel in a small team that aimed to open careful communication channels. With Meera, Daniel felt less alone. She listened without judgment, and together they drew plans for safe contact. Valira visited sometimes, always at night, always brief. She taught Daniel small things about her people's culture. They ate differently. Her food tasted of strange textures and soft lights rather than spice and salt. And she showed him how Caliph music used tones he felt more than heard. She never pressured him to accept the bond. Instead, she shared stories of Caliph elders who devoted themselves to partners of other worlds. She told of quiet, patient love that lasted across lifetimes. Through these visits, Daniel began to understand more of what the Caliph valued: respect, patience, and deep curiosity. Valira admired humans for their humor and their readiness to challenge the unknown. Sometimes she smiled at his jokes, and Daniel felt heat spread through his chest. Other times she would ask him questions about small human things: how coffee tasted, why some people sang when they worked, and he became her teacher in tiny ways. Those moments felt honest and soft, yet danger lurked beyond the circle of these personal lessons. Word of Valira's kind spread in ways Daniel could not control. Soon, other groups took notice, other star travelers who watched distant worlds for resources or opportunity. Not all of them respected the Caliph's changed ways. Rumors reached Valira's people of factions that still used force, groups that still thought of other species as supplies. Those stories made the Caliph wary. Valira admitted this with sadness in her voice. "There are those who do not change as we did," she said one night. "They see life as a balance sheet. They mark worlds and count their value. We avoid them. But they move where life is thick." Daniel listened, heart tightening. He imagined vast fleets, cold and calculating, slipping through the dark to harvest resources. The thought made him angry and afraid. He was only a man, small in the scale of galaxy politics, but his presence had put Earth on other species' maps. He felt responsibility like weight on his shoulders. One evening, alarms woke the world. A distant fleet had been sighted, the kind with hard edges and colder lights. Valeera's people called them the Vorim. Newsfeeds screamed alerts and speculation. Governments convened emergency councils. Daniel's face filled screens as a living proof that Earth was now known beyond its skies. Valeera came to him quietly then, not in a blaze of light, but like a shadow stepping into lamplight. "They mark us now," she said simply. There was no anger in her voice. "Only worry. We must be ready. What can we do?" Daniel asked. "We are not a fleet. We have no defenses like theirs." Valeera reached for his hand. Her touch felt cool and steady. "Your people have something not reckoned by weights and weapons. You make decisions that are not always logical. You show courage when logic tells you to hide. You adapt. These are weapons as sure as any blade. Help me show them." At first, Daniel did not understand. How could courage and creativity stand against fleets and force? But then he remembered stories from his work, of explorers, of communities who had stood together. He thought of Mira and the diplomat, of young engineers who worked all night to solve impossible problems, of ordinary people who took risks for others. These small things combined could surprise a colder enemy. With Valeera's help, Daniel started a plan not of weapons but of alliances. He and Mira organized peaceful emissaries, scientists, artists, engineers, people who could speak of Earth not as weak but as uniquely human. They reached out to nations, not with demands but with offers, shared knowledge, open communication, and joint decisions. Valeera introduced them to Kalith ways of measuring life energy, and to the idea of bonds as promises, not chains. Slowly, a fragile trust formed between humans and Kalith allies. At the same time, Daniel worked with local teams to design simple, clever defenses, systems that used sound waves and light patterns to confuse sensors and slow any approaching fleet. These were not weapons meant to destroy. They were ways to buy time, to shield and evacuate if needed. The Kalith taught them how to move silently and how to avoid attention. It was a race to make something out of very little. Through all this work, Daniel changed. He was no longer only a scientist working with telescopes. He became a bridge between worlds, a voice that chose caution over fear, curiosity over panic. People argued and feared, but others listened. Some days felt like small victories. Others felt like sliding backwards into panic. Most nights, when the world quieted once more, Valeera would visit him. She never pressured him to decide on their bond, though she did not hide her hope. "When you are ready," she said once, "you may join us or stay. Both are honest choices. But know this, your people have shown courage, and courage changes the way others see you." Daniel looked at her then, at the pale skin and the glowing eyes that had once frightened him. He thought of the way the world had reacted, fear and fascination braided together, and of the quiet people who stayed and helped. He saw not only danger but also possibility, that two worlds could find a way to stand together. The choice still lay ahead. For now he worked. He learned the Kalith songs that steadied them in long nights. He taught them about coffee and laughter. He walked between two worlds, feeling both pulled and supported, and when he closed his eyes he could feel the thin thread of the bond there, soft, patient, waiting. It tugged gently like a promise. The world held its breath. For weeks the sky above Earth remained empty, yet every broadcast spoke of the Vorim fleet drawing closer. Their ships had been tracked by telescopes at the edge of the solar system. The cold glimmer of their movement stirred fear in every nation. Some people panicked, others prepared. Governments gathered in urgent councils. The common question rose everywhere. What would the Vorim do when they arrived? Daniel Blake moved through these days like a man balancing two lives. On one side, he was still a scientist trying to measure, to calculate, to understand. On the other side, he was now a voice the world listened to. Sometimes with respect, sometimes with doubt, but always with attention. He carried this weight quietly, never fully comfortable with the idea of being a symbol. Valeera remained near, though never in the open daylight. She guided Daniel, teaching him what the Kalith knew of the Vorim, how they stripped life from worlds, how they ignored bonds, and how they calculated everything by gain and loss. The Caliph had learned to survive them not by war but by caution and cleverness. "They will test your world," Valera said, her tone soft but serious. "They will measure your value as they measure minerals or air. They will decide if you are worth leaving or taking." Daniel's chest grew heavy at those words. He thought of Earth as a place of green fields, noisy cities, deep oceans, and curious people. To have it reduced to a calculation seemed cruel. Yet he also knew Valera spoke the truth. The Vorim would not see Earth's music, stories, or laughter as strength. They would see only numbers. So Daniel worked. With Dr. Mira Patel and her team, he expanded their defense systems. Pulses of light, sound, and energy meant to confuse sensors. He called them lanterns, though others called them decoys. They would not defeat a fleet, but they could buy time. More importantly, Daniel and Valera worked on something else. A plan not of weapons, but of words. Valera explained the Vorim respected only what resisted calculation. If something did not fit their measures, it unsettled them. "They fear what they cannot understand," she told him. "So you must show them that your people are not simple." At first, Daniel doubted. "We're barely reaching spaceflight. What can we show that they don't already know?" Valera answered calmly, "Show them what you are, not what you own." Those words stayed with him. The day finally came when the Vorim fleet appeared. Their ships slid into orbit with cold precision, sharp-edged, dark, and silent. Unlike the Calith's flowing silver forms, these vessels looked like blades against the stars. Alarms rang across Earth. People fled to shelters. Armies prepared weapons that seemed too small against such power. And then a signal came. Not words, not sound, just a command: submit. Governments scrambled. Some urged surrender, others called for resistance. Daniel, standing in a crowded council hall, heard the debates crash like waves. Finally, the room turned to him. The silence pressed against his chest. "Dr. Blake," one leader said, "you have spoken with them before. You know their ways. What should we do?" Daniel swallowed, feeling every eye on him. He thought of Valera's lessons. He thought of laughter, music, and the stubborn courage of humans. He straightened his shoulders. "We cannot meet them with weapons," he said. "We will lose. But we can meet them with what they cannot measure. We must show them that Earth has value beyond their numbers. Let me speak to them, not as a general but as a human." Arguments rose, but in the end, desperation won. The council agreed. That night, under a sky pierced by Vorim shadows, Daniel stood on a platform at an observatory. Around him glowed a set of transmitters built from Calith and human technology combined. Valera stood nearby, her pale presence steady, her eyes glowing with calm strength. "Are you ready?" she asked. Daniel took a slow breath. "Not really, but I'll do it anyway." Valera gave a small smile. "That is readiness enough." The signal opened and Daniel's words crossed the void. "I am Daniel Blake," he began. "I speak for my people, not as a ruler but as one of them. You measure worlds by what they can give you. But Earth is not numbers. We are more." He paused, his heart pounding. Across the sky, he knew Vorim minds listened, weighing every syllable. "You see stone, air, and water, but we see stories. We see a song carried across oceans. We see hands that build even when they tremble. We see laughter that rises even in fear. We see bonds between us that do not break." He looked at Valera then, her gaze steady on him. "We have courage that is not logical. We stand when others would fall. You cannot measure that. You cannot take it. It is what makes us human. It is why you will not break us." For a moment, silence answered. The transmitters hummed. Daniel's hands shook, then at last a voice came. Cold, layered, like machines speaking through stone. "Your words are noise. Life is weight. Show proof or be taken." Daniel closed his eyes. Proof. They wanted proof beyond words. Valera stepped closer and whispered, "The bond." He froze. She meant the Calith bond, the connection that tied one life to another across time and distance. A bond made without fear, a promise stronger than logic. To offer it before the Vorim would mean revealing it to all, showing the deepest part of himself. He hesitated. Was he ready? Valera touched his hand. "You asked once why I chose you. This is why. You are willing to risk yourself for others. That is proof." Daniel looked at the world beneath him, at the lights of cities, the quiet fields, the seas reflecting the stars. He thought of his friends, of Mira, of strangers laughing and living. He thought of humanity itself, Flawed, noisy, stubborn, and brilliant. And he knew his answer. He turned to the transmitters and spoke. This is my proof. He reached for Valira, and in that moment, the bond opened fully, a thread of light unseen by human eyes but felt across the stars. It joined them, human and Calith, two lives woven together. The effect rippled outward. Calith's song stirred in the night, responding to the resonance. Humans nearby felt something too, though they could not name it. An ache, a hope, a rising courage. The Vorim felt it as well. Their measures faltered. The bond did not fit their numbers. It was not possession, not exchange. It was choice. It was promise. Across the comms, the Vorim voice wavered. This connection cannot be calculated, Daniel spoke firmly, his fear gone. That is the point. You cannot calculate it. You cannot own it. That is why we are not yours to take. That is why you must leave. Silence. Long, heavy silence. Then the Vorim answered with words that were not surrender but something close. You are not as measured. We mark you as costly. We will move. And just like that, the fleet shifted. Their ships turned, sharp as blades, and slid back into the dark, leaving Earth untouched. The world erupted in relief. Some called it a miracle, others a trick. But for those who had witnessed, they knew it was something else. Proof that humanity had stood without weapons and survived. Daniel became a legend almost overnight. Crowds gathered outside his observatory. Reporters chased him. Leaders asked for guidance. He accepted little of it, always careful not to act like a ruler. I am just one man, he said again and again. Yet people looked at him differently now, with respect that felt heavier than fear. Dr. Meera Patel and her team continued their work, building bridges between Calith knowledge and human science. Together they opened new ways of seeing energy, of understanding resonance, of blending cultures. Valira remained at Daniel's side. Not as conqueror, not as master, but as partner. Their bond was no longer secret. Some humans feared it, others admired it, but most accepted it. It became a symbol, not of domination, but of choice. In time, songs were written about the night the Vorim came and left. Children played games pretending to be Daniel speaking to the stars. Artists painted the bond as light weaving between two figures. Scholars studied it as history's turning point. One evening, months later, Daniel stood again beneath the stars, Valira beside him. The sky was quiet, peaceful. Do you regret it? She asked softly. He shook his head. No, it began as a joke. I said words I didn't believe. But in the end, they became real. And maybe that's what humans do best. Turn small things into something greater. Valira smiled, her glowing eyes warm. Then your legend begins, Daniel Blake. He looked at her, then at the endless night. Not my legend, ours, humanity's. And with that, Earth stepped into a new chapter, not as prey, not as possession, but as a world that had claimed its place among the stars.